There are fortresses no army can breach, yet a single hidden truth can turn marble halls to dust. Pay close attention to how a bloodline 5 centuries old can be erased in a single evening. Not by war, not by plague, but by a secret no amount of marble or title could contain. 8 coachmen standing silent in a courtyard as a duchess is carried out on a litter, bleeding through white silk, her son shouting at physicians, her reputation turning to ash before witnesses who came to celebrate a wedding. The Duchess of Palacio de los Olivos believed herself above consequence. She was wrong. For years she had taken what she wanted. The coachman who drove her carriage, who waited in the night, who said nothing because servants never do. A rotation of bodies, invisible men whose silence she purchased with fear and authority. But flesh keeps its own records, and when a widow, 14 months without a husband, begins to swell beneath her stays, the clock starts ticking. The problem is, secrets this size don't stay buried. Not when a laundress holds the sheets, not when a sister works the kitchen, and not when the truth is written in blood. If you want to see how the invisible become the reckoning, stay until the end. And subscribe. Stories like this don't stay buried forever. Catalina had been washing the Mendoza family's linen since she was 9 years old. 34 now, and her hands still moved through the same rhythm. Scrub, wring, hang. Her father's debt had bound her here. 300 reales he owed the late Duke for a failed olive harvest, a sum that grew interest like mold and passed to his daughters when he died. Catalina in the laundry, her sister Inez in the kitchen, neither one free to leave. She knew the house the way you know a scar. Every corner, every schedule, every whisper that traveled through stone corridors. She knew which rooms the Duchess visited and which she avoided. She knew the rhythm of Don Rafael's morning rides and the smell of Dr. Salazar's leather bag when he arrived for his weekly consultations. But 3 weeks before the engagement ceremony that would save the estate from ruin, Catalina found something she had not seen in 14 months. Blood on the Duchess's sheet. Not the monthly kind. Catalina had washed those for years and knew the difference. This was spotting, faint and irregular, the kind that came with a body trying to hold on to something or let it go. She stood in the laundry room with the sheet in her hands, cold water running over the stain, and felt the first pull of a question she did not want to answer. The Duke had been dead 14 months. Beatriz de Mendoza was a widow, respectable, pious, the kind of woman who attended Mass twice weekly and oversaw charity distributions to tenant families, the kind of woman whose bedsheets should have been clean. Catalina said nothing. She scrubbed the stain until the fabric ran clear and hung it to dry in the interior courtyard where the sun never reached and the damp clung like a second skin. But she watched. 2 days later she noticed the Duchess's gowns, looser around the waist, the stays laced differently, higher and less constrictive. Beatrice had always been vain about her figure, even in mourning. Now she moved carefully, avoiding mirrors, touching her stomach in small private gestures when she thought no one was looking. Catalina found Inez in the kitchen that evening, elbow deep in flour for the next day's bread. Her sister was 19, quick-fingered and nervous, the kind of girl who's startled at raised voices. "Have you seen the Duchess lately?" Catalina kept her voice low. The cook was in the next room, and walls in the Palacio had ears. Inez wiped her hands on her apron. "She takes her meals in her chambers now, says her stomach is delicate." "How delicate?" "She sent back the lamb yesterday, and the wine." asked for broth and bread. Catalina nodded slowly. Delicate stomach, loose gowns, blood that should not be there. She's pregnant, Catalina said. Inez froze. Her eyes went wide, flour dust still clinging to her wrists. That's not possible. I know. The Duke's been dead over a year. I know. Inez looked toward the door, then back at Catalina. Her voice dropped to a whisper. If anyone finds out, they will. Catalina's tone was flat, certain. The engagement ceremony is in 3 weeks. Lady Sofia Alvear and her father are coming from Seville. Don Rafael is counting on that marriage to save this place from bankruptcy. If the Duchess is carrying a bastard, the Alvears will walk. The estate falls, and when it falls, we go down with it. Inez's hands trembled. What do we do? We watch, and we say nothing until we know more. The next morning, Catalina saw Dr. Salazar arrive. He carried his black leather bag and moved quickly through the main hall toward the Duchess's private chambers, bypassing the usual parlor where he took his consultations. Catalina was changing linens in the adjacent guest room. She left the door cracked and pressed her ear to the gap. The Duchess's voice came through the wall, low and strained. I need something for women's complaints, cramping, irregularity. Dr. Salazar's reply was too quiet to make out. I don't care what it costs, Beatrice said. I need it by tomorrow. Catalina closed the door silently and finished her work. Women's complaints. The kind of phrasing that meant one thing in public and another behind closed doors. She had heard it before from tenant wives who could not afford another mouth to feed. Pennyroyal, tansy, bitter tinctures that loosened the womb and flushed out what should not be there. The Duchess was not trying to carry the child. She was trying to erase it. That evening, Catalina returned to the laundry room and found ash in the Duchess's chamber fireplace. Not wood ash, paper, burned letters, thin and curling, most of them destroyed. But one fragment remained, a corner that had escaped the flame. She picked it up carefully. The handwriting was hurried, informal, a single name visible in the charred edge, Matteo. Catalina knew that name. Matteo was one of the coachmen, young, maybe 25, with dark eyes and a cocky stride. He drove the Duchess to her charitable visits and her estate inspections. He slept in the carriage house with the other drivers, 8 men total who rotated shifts and kept the family's horses and vehicles ready. Catalina folded the fragment and slipped it into her apron pocket. The pieces were coming together, but the picture they formed was worse than she had imagined. Dr. Salazar returned the next day with a small glass vial. Catalina saw him hand it to the Duchess in the corridor outside her chambers, his expression tight and professional. Beatrice took it without a word and disappeared inside. That night, Catalina heard retching from the Duchess's room. Violent, guttural sounds that carried through the walls. In the morning, the chamber pot was full of bile, and the sheets were soaked with sweat. But when Catalina laundered the linens 2 days later, she found more blood. Not the heavy flow of a completed miscarriage. Spotting again. Persistent. The tincture had failed. Catalina watched the Duchess move through the house over the following days. Beatrice's face was gray, her movements slow. She gripped the walls when she thought no one was looking. She sent for Dr. Salazar again. This time, Catalina was close enough to hear the conversation. It didn't work, Beatrice said, her voice hoarse. Duchess, these remedies are not guaranteed, and taking more could... I don't have time for caution. The ceremony is in 2 weeks. I need something stronger. A pause. Then Salazar's voice, quieter. "If you take more, there are risks. Fever, internal bleeding, poison. I'll take the risk. Bring it tomorrow." Catalina stepped back from the door. The Duchess was willing to poison herself rather than let the truth surface. That told Catalina two things. The child was proof of something catastrophic, and Beatrice believed no one would dare speak against her, even if they knew. But silence only lasts as long as fear. Catalina went to the carriage house that evening under the pretense of delivering mended linens to the driver's quarters. The building smelled of hay and leather and horses. The coachmen were eating their supper at a long wooden table, tin plates and hard bread. Tomas, the eldest, looked up when she entered. He had driven for the late Duke for 20 years. His hair was grey at the temples, his face weathered. He had the look of a man who missed the old order. "Laundry?" he asked. "Sheets for your bunks." She set the linens down and turned to leave, but her eyes swept the room. Mateo sat at the far end of the table, laughing at something another driver had said. Vicente, quiet and resentful, sat apart from the group. Tomas followed her gaze. "Something you need?" "Just wondering how many of you are still here from the Duke's time." His expression darkened. "3 of us. The rest came after." "Things change. Not always for the better." She left it at that, but she saw the resentment in his eyes. He had noticed something too. Maybe not the pregnancy, but the shifts in favor. The younger drivers getting the better assignments. The late-night errands that only some of them were called for. Tomas was loyal to the Duke's memory, and that loyalty was about to become a problem for the Duchess. 3 days later, Catalina found the second set of burned letters. She was emptying the Duchess's chamber pot, a task reserved for the most trusted servants, which meant the most silent ones, when she saw fresh ash in the fireplace. The room still smelled of smoke, though no fire had been lit that morning. Someone had burned something in the night. Catalina knelt and sifted through the ash with a fire poker. Most of it crumbled to nothing, but one corner had survived, curled and brown. She recognized the handwriting, Mateo's. The words were half gone, but she could make out Tuesday and carriage house. She folded the fragment into her apron and stood, heart pounding. The Duchess was erasing evidence, which meant she knew the secret was fragile. Catalina carried the chamber pot down the back stairs, past the kitchen where Inez was kneading dough, and out to the waste trench behind the garden wall. She emptied it, rinsed it with well water, and stood there in the morning sun, thinking. The engagement ceremony was 17 days away. Lady Sofia Alvear and her father were scheduled to arrive in 10. There would be a formal dinner, a contract signing, a public announcement in the cathedral. The Duchess had to appear healthy, composed, and above reproach. But Catalina had seen the soiled cloths. The pregnancy was not going away, and neither was the poison. She returned to the laundry room and found Inez waiting for her, flour still on her hands. "The physician came again last night," Inez whispered. "I saw him leave through the side door. He was carrying a bottle." Catalina set the chamber pot down. "Did anyone else see him?" "No. It was past midnight, but—" Inez hesitated. "I heard him talking to the Duchess in the corridor. He said something about dosage, about how much the body could take." Catalina's chest tightened. Did he sound worried? He sounded afraid. That made sense. Dr. Salazar was the estate physician. If the Duchess died from the tincture, he would carry the blame. But if she gave birth before the wedding, the scandal would destroy him too. He was trapped between two failures, which meant he would keep increasing the dose until something gave way. Catalina looked at her sister. "Stay out of the Duchess's chambers. Don't go near her unless someone else is with you. If this goes wrong, they'll look for someone to blame, and it won't be the physician." Inez nodded, pale. "And don't tell anyone what you heard. Not the other kitchen girls. Not anyone." "I won't." But Catalina knew how secrets worked in a place like this. The servants' quarters had eyes and ears everywhere. If Inez had seen the physician, someone else had too. And if the Duchess kept burning letters, someone would notice the ash. The truth was a live thing now. It was moving. 2 days before the Alvears were scheduled to arrive, the Duchess stopped leaving her chambers. Don Rafael knocked on her door 3 times that morning, his voice tight with frustration. "Mother, the seamstress is here. You need to be fitted for the ceremony gown." No answer. "Mother." Still nothing. He turned to Catalina, who was standing in the corridor with fresh linens. "Is she ill?" "I don't know, Your Grace. She hasn't called for anything." "Go in and check." Catalina hesitated. She doesn't like to be disturbed. "I don't care what she likes. Go." Catalina knocked, waited, then opened the door. The room was dark, curtains drawn. The Duchess was in bed, propped against pillows, her face grey and damp with sweat. The chamber pot beside the bed was full of dark, foul-smelling liquid. Blood and bile. Catalina set the linens down and approached the bed. "Your Grace?" The Duchess opened her eyes. They were glassy, unfocused. "I need the physician." "I'll send for him." "No." The Duchess's hand shot out and gripped Catalina's wrist. Her fingers were cold. "Don't tell Rafael. Just bring Salazar. Quietly." Catalina nodded. The Duchess released her and sank back into the pillows, breathing shallowly. Catalina left the room and found Don Rafael still waiting in the corridor. "She's resting, Your Grace. She asked not to be disturbed." "Is she ill?" "She says it's only fatigue." Rafael's jaw tightened. "The Alvears arrive in 2 days. She cannot be fatigued. Tell her to get up." "Yes, Your Grace." But Catalina did not go back into the room. She went down to the courtyard, found the stable boy, and told him to fetch Dr. Salazar. Quickly, quietly. The physician arrived an hour later, carrying his black leather bag. Catalina led him up the back stairs and into the Duchess's chamber. He closed the door behind them. "Leave us," he said. "She asked me to stay." He looked at the Duchess, who nodded weakly. He sighed and set his bag on the bedside table. He examined her in silence, checking her pulse, her tongue, her eyes. He lifted the blanket and saw the blood-soaked linens beneath. His expression darkened. "How much of the tincture did you take?" "What you gave me." "All of it?" "Yes." "That was meant to last 3 days." The Duchess closed her eyes. It wasn't working. Salazar stood and turned away, rubbing his face. "Your Grace, the dose I gave you was already at the limit. If you took it all at once, I'm still pregnant. You're also poisoned." He turned back to her. "The pennyroyal is toxic in high amounts. It's shutting down your kidneys. You're bleeding internally. If I don't treat this, you will die." "Then treat it." "I can't treat it and end the pregnancy. The treatments oppose each other." The Duchess opened her eyes. "Then end the pregnancy first." "There's no time. The ceremony is in 9 days. Even if the pregnancy ends now, you won't recover fast enough to appear in public. And if you keep bleeding like this—" He stopped. "Your Grace, you need to delay the wedding." "No." "Then you need to tell your son." "Absolutely not." Salazar looked at Catalina as if expecting her to intervene. She said nothing. He turned back to the Duchess. "I'll do what I can, but I need you to understand. If you collapse in front of the Alviers, I will have to tell them the truth. I won't lie to save your reputation if it means letting you die." The Duchess stared at him. "You will do exactly as I say. I'm a physician, not a conspirator. You're an employee, and you'll do as you're told, or you'll lose your position and your license." Salazar's face went pale. He picked up his bag. "I'll prepare a tonic to slow the bleeding, but I'm telling you now, this will not hold." He left. The Duchess lay back and closed her eyes. Catalina stood by the door, silent. "You're still here," the Duchess said without opening her eyes. "Yes, Your Grace." "Do you have something to say?" Catalina thought about the burned letters, the blood on the sheets, the coachmen standing in the courtyard, waiting for their next assignment. She thought about Inez, and the blow that would come when this all collapsed. "No, Your Grace." The Duchess smiled faintly. "Liar." The Alviers arrived on schedule. Lady Sophia was 20, dark-haired, composed. Her father, Don Cristobal Alviar, was a broad man in black velvet, his eyes sharp and assessing. They brought a retinue of 6, secretaries, a maid, 2 drivers. Don Rafael greeted them in the entry hall, all charm and practiced grace. "Welcome to Palacio de los Olivos. We are honored by your presence." Don Cristobal shook his hand. "Where is the Duchess?" "She'll join us for dinner. She's been overseeing preparations all week." "I'd like to meet her now." Rafael's smile tightened. "Of course. Let me see if she's available." He sent a servant to check. The servant returned 5 minutes later and whispered in his ear. Rafael's face went rigid. "My mother is indisposed at the moment," he said smoothly, "but she'll be ready this evening." Don Cristobal nodded, but Catalina, standing near the wall with other house servants, saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Lady Sophia noticed it too. She glanced at her father, then at Rafael. The dinner was set for 7 o'clock, 4 hours away. At 6:30, Catalina and Inez were summoned to the Duchess's chambers. The Duchess was sitting at her vanity, dressed in a deep blue gown with a high collar and tight stays. Her face was powdered white to hide the grey pallor beneath. Her hands trembled as she fastened her earrings. "Help me stand," she said. Catalina and Inez each took an arm and lifted her to her feet. The Duchess swayed, gripping the vanity edge. "I can do this," she murmured. Inez looked at Catalina, terrified. Catalina said nothing. She adjusted the Duchess's gown, smoothing the fabric over the stays. Beneath the silk, she could feel the swell of the belly. Small, but there. The Duchess took a breath and walked toward the door. She made it 3 steps before her knees buckled. Catalina caught her before she hit the floor. The weight was wrong. Not the weight of a woman fainting, the weight of a body giving up. Catalina lowered her to the carpet. The Duchess's eyes rolled back. Her lips moved, soundless. "Inez," Catalina said sharp, "get him, now." Her sister ran. Catalina pressed her palm to the Duchess's forehead. Burning. The fever had climbed since morning. She glanced at the gown. White silk, pristine, chosen for the evening's performance. Then she saw it. A dark stain spreading across the Duchess's lap, soaking through the silk. Blood. Dr. Salazar arrived within minutes, breathless. He knelt beside the Duchess, opened his bag, and froze when he saw the blood. "How long has she been bleeding?" "Just now," Catalina said. He lifted the Duchess's wrist, checked her pulse. His face tightened. He looked at Catalina. "Help me move her to the bed." They carried her together. The Duchess's head lolled. Her breathing came shallow and fast. Salazar worked quickly, lifting the gown, examining, his hands precise. Then he stopped. He stared at what he'd found. Catalina watched his expression change. He looked at her. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. He nodded slowly. He didn't ask anything else. He pulled a cloth from his bag, pressed it between the Duchess's legs to slow the bleeding, and stood. "She needs a surgeon, tonight, or she'll die by morning. The dinner is over," he said. Downstairs, the hall blazed with candlelight. 50 guests, crystal glinting, the smell of roasted lamb and wine. Don Rafael stood at the head of the table beside Lady Sophia, her father watching from his seat, fingers drumming the armrest. The major domo entered, leaned close to Rafael, and whispered. Rafael's face went white. He stood. "Excuse me." He climbed the stairs 2 at a time. When he entered his mother's chamber, Dr. Salazar was washing his hands in the basin. The Duchess lay on the bed, pale as the sheets, blood-soaked cloths piled on the floor. "What happened?" Rafael's voice cracked. Salazar dried his hands. He turned to face him. "Your mother is pregnant." Silence. Rafael stared. "That's not possible." "It is," Salazar said. "Approximately 4 months. She's been attempting to terminate it with pennyroyal tincture. The dosage was too high. It's poisoning her." Rafael's mouth opened. No sound came out. "Who?" he finally said. Salazar shook his head. "She hasn't said." Rafael looked at his mother. Her eyes were half open, unfocused. He stepped closer. "Who?" he said again, louder. The Duchess's lips moved. "Nothing." Rafael grabbed her shoulder. "Who?" She didn't answer. He turned to Salazar. "You have to save her." "I'll do what I can. But the guests—" "I don't care about the guests. They'll ask questions." Rafael closed his eyes. He stood there breathing hard. Then he walked out. When he returned to the hall, every face turned toward him. Lady Sophia stood. "Is everything all right?" Rafael opened his mouth. He didn't know what to say. Her father rose from his seat. "Don Rafael, what's happening?" "My mother is ill," Rafael said. "The physician is with her." "Ill how?" the Alvear patriarch said. Rafael hesitated. That was enough. The old man's eyes narrowed. He gestured to his daughter. "Sophia, we're leaving." "Father." "Now." She looked at Rafael. He said nothing. They left. The other guests followed within the hour. The hall emptied. The candles burned down. Upstairs, the Duchess began to convulse. By dawn, the bleeding had stopped, but the pregnancy was gone. Dr. Salazar sat in the corner, exhausted. Rafael stood by the window, staring at nothing. Catalina entered with clean linens. She moved quietly, changing the sheets while the Duchess slept. Rafael turned. "You knew?" Catalina met his eyes. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have believed me?" He didn't answer. "Who was it?" he said finally. Catalina set the soiled linens aside. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she told him. The coachmen were summoned that afternoon, all 8 of them standing in a line in the courtyard. Rafael walked the row, looking at each face. Tomas, gray-haired, dignified. Mateo, young, smirking until Rafael stopped in front of him. Vicente, Paulo, Andres, Esteban, Luis, Joaquin. "Which one of you," Rafael said, voice shaking, "dishonored my family?" Silence. "Answer me." Tomas stepped forward. "All of us." Rafael turned. "What?" "She called us," Tomas said. "One at a time, for months. We couldn't refuse." Mateo laughed bitterly. Refuse? She's the Duchess. What were we supposed to do? Raphael stared at them. He looked like a man watching his house burn. "Get out," he whispered. They didn't move. "Get out," he shouted. They left. Within the week, they'd scattered, some to other estates, some to the cities. Matteo made it as far as Seville before someone found him dead in an alley, throat cut, pockets empty. No one investigated. The scandal moved faster than wildfire. Within 2 weeks, every house in Andalusia knew. The Duchess and her coachman, the poisoned pregnancy, the ruined engagement. The Alvear family pulled their offer. The creditors arrived. The estate went to auction. Raphael tried to fight it. He spent everything he had left on lawyers. It didn't matter. By autumn, Palacio de los Olivos belonged to a merchant family from Cadiz. The Duchess was sent to a convent outside Granada. Raphael followed her there once. She refused to see him. He left for Madrid and was never heard from again. Catalina and Inez were freed when the estate changed hands. The new owners wanted no part of the old debts. They traveled north to Valencia, where no one knew the name Mendoza. Before they left, Catalina returned to the laundry room one last time. She pulled the charred letter from her apron pocket, the fragment with Matteo's name, the one she'd kept all those weeks. She held it over the lamp flame and watched it burn. The ash drifted to the floor. Outside, the olive groves stood silent under the autumn sun.